Hi, my name is Emily, and this is my favorite brain part presentation. I decided to do my project over the prefrontal cortex, which is a portion of your frontal lobe made up of gray matter and has many different functions, including cognitive analysis, emotion regulation, and social behavior. And this part of the brain develops in a front to back pattern in which the back side develops first and moves forward. So the prefrontal cortex is one of the last brain structures to become developed. And there are two main subgroups of the prefrontal cortex, which is lateral and ventromedial. The lateral prefrontal cortex can further be broken down into two further subgroups, the dorsolateral and ventrolateral prefrontal cortexes. The dorsolateral is responsible for managing how we interact with external stimuli, and this can include things like our working memory, planning, decision making, and our control with attention. And the ventrolateral prefrontal cortex focuses more on the emotional side of how we react to outside stimuli. And this can include things like our reward center, motivation, and threat detection. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex mainly focuses on the emotional aspect of things. So when we receive input of external stimuli, we are then able to create emotions from that, and then we can create physiological behaviors which show those emotions. And other functions of the ventromedial prefrontal cortex include decision making, long-term memory, and default mode network, which is a network of different brain structures that are active when we aren't physically thinking about the world around us. This can include things like daydreaming and thinking about our present or past or future. One of the psychological aspects of the prefrontal cortex is how we are able to interact with other people socially. So children may not be able to have certain behaviors such as impulse control and problem solving because they don't have a fully formed prefrontal cortex yet. And the chart below here shows that the prefrontal cortex peaks at around ages 6 to 8, so children before the age of that may not have a fully formed prefrontal cortex. Frontal lobe syndrome is a disease in which the frontal lobe becomes damaged, and many functions of the prefrontal cortex are not able to function properly, including planning, social behavior, and language and speech. And it can be a result of many different things, including head trauma, neurodegenerative disease, brain tumors, and chronic stress during early childhood. Having an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex can be caused by many different factors, including malnutrition, exposure to toxins, and lots of trauma to the head. And this again pulls back to the frontal lobe syndrome, in which the prefrontal cortex can become damaged, as seen in the photo on the right. And this can cause children to function abnormally in social aspects with other children and adults because they may have a lot of impulsive behavior, bad decision making, and an inability to regulate their emotions properly. And lastly, why I chose the prefrontal cortex for this project. I think it's super interesting how much our prefrontal cortex can affect our individual personalities, such as our motivation systems. Everybody is going to have a different amount of motivation, and this can lead to different behaviors. If we get frustrated easily, if we have grit, things like that can impact our personality a lot. And another thing is social behavior. We all intake external stimuli differently, and then we create an emotion for that and a physiological effect for that. So that is such a huge spectrum, and everybody will intake external stimuli completely differently from each other. I also wanted to explain the picture here below, showing the top row as healthy participants with full and good prefrontal cortex stimulation, while the second row is people who have social anxiety, and that prefrontal cortex stimuli is diminished compared to that of the healthy participants.